Imagine living your entire life believing that every setback, every failure, every gut-punching challenge wasn't there to break you, but to build you. I know, it sounds like one of those feel-good quotes you scroll past on Instagram. The kind that gets a few likes and then vanishes into the feed. But what if I told you it's not just a motivational catchphrase? What if that idea, that every obstacle is actually setting you up for something greater, is deeply rooted in a philosophy that's over 2,000 years old and more relevant now than ever? I'm talking about Stoicism. Not the cold, emotionless version people sometimes think it is, but the real Stoicism, the kind that teaches us how to not just endure life's battles, but to lean into them, to use them, to transform our struggles into strength and our pain into purpose. Today we're going deep, into the heart of this ancient wisdom, into the mindset of warriors, leaders, philosophers, people who faced the chaos of life head-on and came out wiser, calmer, stronger. Because the truth is, life's not getting any easier. The world's noisy, fast, and filled with pressures pulling you in every direction. Whether you're dealing with heartbreak, burnout, a business on the edge, or just the quiet ache of feeling lost, Stoicism gives you a way through it. Not by promising to fix the chaos around you, but by showing you how to master the chaos within you. And that's the real shift. The moment you realize that power doesn't come from controlling everything around you, it comes from controlling how you respond. That's the Stoic edge. That's what separates reacting from responding, drowning from navigating, surviving from actually living. So if you've ever felt like you're stuck in a cycle, like life keeps throwing punches, and you're just trying to stay on your feet, if you've been searching for some kind of clarity, or even just a little peace amid the madness, then you're in the right place. Because this isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about becoming someone who can face anything and still choose how you show up. We're going to explore what it means to live with intention, to carry yourself with integrity, and to build a spirit that refuses to break. And here's the best part, this isn't theory. It's not philosophy for the bookshelf. It's for your life, for your relationships, for your business, for every hard conversation, every tough decision, every moment that tempts you to quit. This is a journey, and it's not just mine. It's ours. We're walking it together. And along the way, we're going to take these ancient Stoic truths and turn them into something you can feel, something you can use, something that actually changes the way you live. So take a deep breath. Get ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about struggle and success. Because we're not here to coast, we're here to evolve. Let's turn your setbacks into stepping stones, your doubts into discipline, and your pain into power. Start discovering the 13 secrets that will help you do well in everything in life. Number 1, question your limits, embracing growth and potential. There are moments in life when we feel a quiet tug inside, a nudge that tells us we're capable of more, that we've been settling into a version of ourselves that doesn't fully reflect our potential. Maybe it happens in the middle of a workday when you realize you're simply going through the motions. Or during a quiet evening when you start questioning the path you've been on. This experience is far more common than most people admit. We get comfortable. We get used to routines, expectations, and habits. And before we know it, we stop asking one of the most powerful questions available to us. Why not? It seems simple on the surface, but when used with honesty and intention, why not becomes a transformative tool. It invites you to re-examine the artificial boundaries you've accepted as reality. These boundaries might have come from past failures, societal expectations, or deep-seated fears of rejection or disappointment. But those limits aren't fixed. They're often assumptions we've unconsciously adopted. By posing the question, why not? You create the space to challenge these assumptions and open the door to possibilities you might have otherwise ignored. This mindset aligns beautifully with Stoic philosophy. The Stoics were not passive observers of life. They didn't drift aimlessly or surrender to inertia. On the contrary, they believed in the power of active self-examination, of living with intention and principle. For them, growth wasn't just a nice idea, it was a responsibility. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most iconic Stoic figures, was an emperor, but also a man who wrote daily reflections urging himself to be better, to rise above pettiness, and to live in accordance with virtue. That discipline wasn't born from ego, it came from a commitment to continuous self-betterment. To think like a Stoic is to constantly ask, is there a better, wiser, more courageous version of myself I'm not yet living into? And if so, why not reach for it? This doesn't mean throwing caution to the wind or making reckless decisions. Stoicism is not about blind leaps, it's about calculated, value-driven action. When a Stoic chooses the harder path, it's not for show. It's because that path offers growth. It offers the opportunity to develop courage, patience, or perseverance. So when you find yourself hesitating, whether it's applying for a role you feel unqualified for, pursuing a creative passion you've buried for years, or having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, try asking, why not? Why not step forward instead of shrinking back? What's important to understand is that this isn't only about external achievements. It's just as much about the inner game, the quiet battles we fight in our minds. The self-doubt that whispers you're not ready, the fear that insists you'll fail, the complacency that assures you it's safer not to try. When you question your limits, you're not just confronting outside barriers, you're also dismantling these internal roadblocks, one thought at a time. The truth is, greatness isn't a lightning bolt, it's a slow-burning fire. It begins with questions, with curiosity, and with the courage to challenge what's always been. And when you begin to live with this Stoic mindset, you stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop letting fear write your story. Instead, you take ownership. You ask the tough questions. You take the meaningful risks. And in doing so, you move closer to the fullest, most authentic expression of yourself. So when the next moment of hesitation arises, pause, breathe, and instead of retreating, lean into the question, why not? Then watch how your world begins to shift. Number 2, the pursuit of improvement, becoming a Prokopton. There is something deeply energizing about the idea of progress. The sense that no matter where we are in life, we can evolve, stretch, and transform. In Stoic philosophy, this idea of ongoing personal development is captured in a single word, Prokopton. It refers not to someone who has arrived at perfection, but to someone who is fully committed to the journey of becoming better. A Prokopton is a work in progress, not a finished product. And that's exactly what the Stoics believed life was about: continual refinement, growth, and evolution in alignment with virtue. The Stoics never promised that life would be easy, nor did they preach the illusion of flawless living. Instead, they embraced the notion that the most meaningful existence is one where we strive each day to grow in character, wisdom, and resilience. For them, the true measure of a life well lived wasn't status, wealth, or accolades, but the depth of one's self-mastery. Improvement was the goal, steady, intentional, and rooted in personal responsibility. Being obsessed with getting better doesn't mean being consumed by self-criticism or falling into perfectionism. Quite the opposite. It's about cultivating a compassionate and disciplined commitment to progress, a kind of quiet but unshakable drive to live in closer alignment with your values. You recognize that there's always room to grow, always something to refine, and that the pursuit itself is the reward. When you become deeply invested in your own growth, life takes on a new kind of richness. Whether you're learning a new skill, deepening your emotional intelligence, improving your relationships, or practicing patience in the face of adversity, every effort becomes an act of self-honoring. And when setbacks inevitably arise, because they will, you don't view them as failures, but as essential parts of your learning process. That too is a Stoic mindset, to meet challenges not with despair but with curiosity and courage. Improvement begins with clarity. Knowing what you stand for and who you want to become is the first step. From there, you set goals that are not just achievable, but meaningful, goals that speak to your deeper values rather than the fleeting approval of others. You examine your habits and choices regularly, not with judgment, but with an honest desire to align them more fully with your purpose. This reflection isn't a one-time task. It's a daily ritual, a moment of reconnection with your intention to grow. Staying curious is key. When you approach life with a learner's mindset, open to feedback, eager for knowledge, willing to adapt, you become more resilient and more effective. You stop resisting change and start embracing it as a vehicle for growth. Even discomfort becomes welcome because you know it often precedes transformation. There's a kind of quiet joy in this endless journey. When you see yourself not as someone who must be perfect, but as someone who is fully alive in the process of becoming, you liberate yourself from unrealistic standards. You begin to thrive in the act of learning, in the richness of effort, and in the strength that comes from facing your own edges with courage. To live as a Prokopton is to make growth your lifestyle, not a side project or a phase, but a way of moving through the world. It's a choice to be conscious, deliberate, and intentional. And in doing so, you don't just improve your own life, you inspire others to do the same. So let your life be a testament to the beauty of progress. Wake up each day with the intention to stretch, to learn, to elevate your thinking and your actions. Not for show, not for validation, but because there is no deeper fulfillment than becoming a truer, wiser version of yourself. This is what it means to live stoically. This is the path of the Prokopton. Number 3, pour your heart into your endeavors, commitment, and virtue. There is something deeply admirable about someone who gives their all, not because they're being watched, praised, or rewarded, but simply because it's who they are. This kind of wholehearted commitment, this quiet intensity of purpose, is at the core of Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, virtue wasn't a theoretical concept or something to occasionally strive for. It was a daily practice, a standard for how one engages with the world, how one works, and how one lives. And at the center of this practice lies the idea of pouring your heart into everything you do. When a Stoic commits to something, they don't approach it halfway. Whether it's their duties, their relationships, or their personal growth, they engage with full presence and effort. They don't ask, "What will I get out of this?" Instead, they ask, "What can I give to this?" Their motivation doesn't come from applause or achievement. It comes from alignment. When they act in accordance with their values, and this alignment is what gives their actions power, integrity, and meaning. To pour your heart into something is to live deliberately. It means waking up each day with the awareness that your time is limited, your energy is precious, and the way you show up, even in the smallest moments, matters. It's a decision to resist drifting through life on autopilot and instead step into each day with purpose. Whether it's the work you do, the way you treat others, or the goals you pursue, you decide to be all in. And being all in doesn't necessarily mean pushing harder or working longer. It means being more present. It means approaching even ordinary tasks with attention and sincerity. It means choosing to bring care into your actions, passion into your efforts, and principle into your decisions. It's about quality, not performance, the depth of engagement, not the size of the result. But commitment is tested most not when things are easy, but when they're uncertain, uncomfortable, or slow-moving. In those moments, it's tempting to pull back, to protect yourself from effort that might not be recognized or progress that feels invisible. But the Stoics would remind us that the value of our actions isn't found in the outcome. It's found in the act itself. It's in the choice to stay loyal to your path, to your craft, to your purpose, even when the external rewards are nowhere in sight. So how do you cultivate this kind of wholehearted effort? You begin by getting clear on what truly matters to you. What are the values you want to live by? What work makes you feel most alive? What goals, when pursued, make you feel more connected to yourself and to the world? When you know what calls to you, commit. Not halfway, not someday, but now. Give it your attention, your energy, your focus. Set high standards not out of pressure, but because you respect your life enough to expect the best from yourself. And know that giving your all isn't a one-time act. It's not reserved for grand projects or major life events. It's a way of being, something you bring into every room you enter, every conversation you have, every decision you make. It's a choice you make again and again, to live with purpose, to act with care, and to show up fully, regardless of who's watching. This kind of life doesn't just lead to results, it leads to transformation. Because the more you give, the more you grow. The more you commit, the more clarity you gain. And slowly, you start to become someone you can be proud of, not because you've accomplished everything, but because you've lived with intention, consistency, and heart. Ultimately, pouring your heart into your endeavors is about who you are becoming. It's not only about what you achieve, but about the way you move through the world, grounded in values, driven by purpose, and committed to giving your very best to the life you've been given. Number 4, stay on your path, navigating life with purpose and integrity. In today's world, staying on your path can feel like swimming upstream. There's constant noise, social media pulling your attention in 10 directions, societal expectations nudging you toward the conventional, and the pressure to conform distracting you from your deeper truth. The temptation to compare, to drift, to chase what looks shiny but feels hollow is everywhere. Yet within this chaos lies an opportunity, the chance to stand firmly rooted in who you are and where you're going. That act alone is rare, and in many ways it's revolutionary. To the Stoics, staying on your path wasn't simply a motivational slogan or personal development catchphrase. It was a fundamental principle for living with integrity. It meant knowing what mattered most and refusing to abandon it, even when the winds of life tried to blow you off course. Staying committed to your values, your purpose, and your personal growth wasn't just a good idea. It was a moral obligation to yourself and to the people around you. So what does it really mean to stay on your path? It begins with clarity. You must know what you're living for. What are your non-negotiables? What principles guide your decisions? What vision pulls you forward even when things are tough? Without that clarity, you're likely to be swayed by external influences, reacting instead of leading, imitating instead of creating. Your path becomes whatever is trending or convenient, and before long, you lose connection with your own voice. But when you have that internal compass, when you know what you stand for, something powerful happens. You become resilient in the face of distraction. You don't crumble under pressure or lose yourself in comparison. You develop a quiet, focused strength that allows you to move with intention, even when everything around you feels uncertain. That doesn't mean your path will be straight or easy. Life, as the Stoics acknowledged, is unpredictable. You will encounter setbacks, detours, disappointments, and doubts. And staying on your path doesn't mean blindly sticking to a plan that no longer serves you. It means staying true to your values while being flexible enough to adjust your course as you grow. Like a seasoned sailor navigating rough waters, you learn to adjust your sails without changing your destination. Adaptability and integrity can coexist. One keeps you moving, the other keeps you grounded. The real challenge lies in the day-to-day choices. It's easy to make big declarations about purpose and goals, but the Stoics understood that character is built in the small moments. When you choose honesty over convenience, focus over distraction, and discipline over comfort, staying on your path requires vigilance. It's a practice, not a one-time decision. You must continually check in with yourself. Are my actions aligned with my values? Is this choice bringing me closer to the person I want to become? Self-awareness is the anchor. Taking time to reflect, to journal, to assess your direction isn't self-indulgent, it's essential. Because when you're aware of who you are and where you're headed, your decisions become easier. You stop chasing approval and start seeking alignment. You let go of paths that don't belong to you and begin to honor your own journey with courage and clarity. And of course, none of this is possible without resilience. There will be moments when you feel lost, discouraged, or unsure. But these moments aren't signs of failure, they're part of the process. The Stoic path isn't one of perfection, but of persistence. You don't stay the course because it's smooth. You stay because it's yours. And every time you recommit to it, after falling down, after doubting yourself, after getting distracted, you grow stronger, more focused, more alive. So as the world swirls around you with its endless noise and competing narratives, remember this. You don't need to do everything, be everywhere, or follow anyone else's map. You just need to stay true to your own. Let your values guide you, let your vision sustain you, and let each step you take be an act of integrity. That's what it means to stay on your path, and that's where true fulfillment begins. Number 5, letting go of outcomes, finding freedom in the process. From the time we're young, most of us are conditioned to chase results. We're told to focus on winning, achieving, producing, and to measure our success by the tangible rewards we collect along the way. Whether it's grades in school, promotions at work, or recognition in our personal lives, there's an almost constant emphasis on the outcome. But while this mindset might fuel ambition, it also breeds anxiety, frustration, and disappointment, especially when things don't turn out the way we hoped. This is where Stoicism offers a powerful shift, the invitation to release our grip on results and instead anchor ourselves in the process. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a simple yet radical idea: control what you can, let go of what you can't. The Stoics taught that the only things truly within our control are our thoughts, actions, and attitudes. Everything else, outcomes, opinions, external events, exists beyond our sphere of influence. And while it's human nature to care about results, the Stoics remind us that tying our worth, our peace, or our happiness to things we don't fully control is a recipe for disappointment. To let go of outcomes doesn't mean giving up on goals or ambition. It means reframing the way we define success. It's about shifting your focus from the finish line to the steps you take each day. When you pour your effort, your attention, and your heart into what you're doing, not for the applause, but for the love of the craft or the value of the effort, you begin to discover a different kind of fulfillment. It's quieter, perhaps, but deeper. It's not fleeting like recognition. It's enduring because it comes from within. Imagine working on a project not for the praise it might bring, but because the process itself is meaningful. Or putting energy into a relationship not to control how the other person responds, but because being kind, honest, and present aligns with who you want to be. This is the Stoic ideal, finding purpose in the doing, not the result. Of course, this kind of mindset takes practice. Letting go of outcomes can feel uncomfortable, especially in a world obsessed with metrics and milestones. But the freedom it brings is worth the discomfort. When you stop measuring your value by what you can't control, you reclaim your power. You become less reactive, more grounded, and more resilient. You're no longer derailed by disappointment because your sense of success isn't tethered to things outside of you. It's rooted in your effort, your integrity, and your growth. So how do you begin to live this way? Start by getting clear on your values. Who do you want to be, regardless of what happens around you? What principles matter most to you? Let those guide your actions. Then, when you set goals, set them not just in terms of outcomes, but in terms of character, in terms of the type of effort you want to give and the mindset you want to maintain. And when you feel yourself becoming overly attached to results, when anxiety creeps in, or impatience takes hold, pause. Breathe. Remind yourself that while you may not be able to control how things unfold, you are always in control of how you show up. Your energy is best spent not on worrying about the finish line, but on taking the next right step with focus and heart. Letting go of outcomes doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care deeply about the things that truly matter, your effort, your character, and the way you meet each moment. In that shift, you'll find a powerful kind of peace, the kind that doesn't rely on results, but on the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you gave your best. Number 6, you attract what you embody, the mirror of virtues. Imagine that your life is a mirror, not just reflecting your appearance to the outside world, but mirroring back who you truly are on the inside. The energy you carry, the mindset you adopt, the character you cultivate, all of it is silently projected into the world and in turn shapes the quality of your experiences. This is the essence of the Stoic belief that we attract what we embody, not through mystical thinking or wishful hoping, but through the very real, grounded truth that our inner state influences how we interact with life and how life responds to us. If you move through the world harboring resentment, fear, or bitterness, those emotions will inevitably bleed into your interactions, cloud your perspective, and reinforce more of the same in return. You'll find yourself caught in patterns of negativity, not because the world is cruel, but because your own mindset is filtering how you perceive and respond to it. On the other hand, if you cultivate inner virtues, kindness, patience, courage, resilience, those traits will not only shape your behavior, they will attract others who resonate with them. The world starts to shift because you have. This idea is not about putting on a false front or pretending to be something you're not. Stoicism doesn't ask us to be performative, it asks us to be authentic, to develop from the inside out, to build a strong foundation of character that remains stable, even when the external world is unstable. The Stoics knew that we cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can control who we are in response. And that, they believed, was the highest form of power. So how do you embody this principle in your daily life? It begins with self-reflection, the habit of checking in with yourself, not to judge harshly, but to understand clearly. What patterns of thought are guiding your actions? What emotions are you carrying that might need to be released or redirected? This process of inner inventory isn't about perfection. It's about becoming aware of the gap between who you are and who you want to be, and then gently closing that gap, one step at a time. Next comes the practice of consciously cultivating the virtues that align with your values. Maybe for you it's courage, the willingness to speak up, to take risks, to face discomfort. Or perhaps it's compassion, learning to treat others and yourself with more softness and understanding. Or integrity, the discipline to act according to your principles, even when it's inconvenient. These are not abstract ideals, they are daily choices, forged in the small moments. The way you treat a stranger, the way you respond to stress, the way you keep your word. And when you inevitably stumble, because everyone does, it's not a failure. It's another opportunity to grow. The Stoic path isn't one of constant excellence, but of continuous effort. It's about the willingness to reflect, to learn, and to return to your values again and again. This humility is itself a virtue, one that keeps you grounded and open to transformation. As you begin to align your inner life with your highest ideals, you'll start to notice subtle but powerful changes. Relationships deepen, not because people change, but because you do. Work becomes more purposeful, not because the tasks change, but because your approach does. Challenges feel more manageable, not because they're easier, but because you've become stronger. In this way, life reflects your character. What you embody, you attract, not through force, but through the quiet gravity of authenticity. Ultimately, this is the Stoic invitation, to stop trying to change the world by controlling it, and instead, to change the way you meet the world by refining who you are. The more you embody what you seek, peace, strength, clarity, connection, the more those things will find their way into your experience. The world becomes a mirror, and the reflection is unmistakably yours. Number 7, embrace challenges, obstacles as pathways to growth. Life rarely unfolds without resistance. Challenges, disruptions, and unexpected detours are part of the terrain we all must navigate. Sometimes they arrive as minor annoyances, a delayed plan, a difficult conversation, a failure to meet a goal. Other times, they come crashing into our lives with the force of loss, heartbreak, or profound change. Our instinct is often to resist, to get frustrated, to see these obstacles as unfair or unfortunate. But what if we saw them differently? What if we viewed them not as roadblocks, but as teachers? This is the heart of a powerful Stoic principle. The obstacle is the way. The Stoics didn't romanticize hardship, nor did they deny the reality of pain. What made their perspective radical was how they chose to meet those hardships. They believed that within every difficulty lies an opportunity, a hidden gift waiting to be uncovered. And they understood that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. That response, how we engage with challenge, is what shapes our character. To embrace a challenge means more than just tolerating it. It means leaning in with the mindset that there is something here for you. Not because suffering is noble, but because struggle, when met with the right attitude, reveals hidden strengths and builds resilience. Every time you face adversity and choose to stay present, to keep moving forward, to reflect and grow rather than retreat, you are transformed. The obstacle doesn't stop you. It becomes the very thing that strengthens you. This mindset shift begins with a simple pause. When something difficult arises, instead of rushing into reaction, frustration, blame, self-pity, take a breath and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? This question opens the door to a new way of seeing. Instead of focusing on the inconvenience or the pain, you start to focus on the lesson. You begin to see challenges as opportunities to cultivate patience, to sharpen discipline, to deepen your courage, or to practice humility. Each difficulty becomes a chance to become more of who you are capable of being. And while it's tempting to wait for the obstacle to pass so you can get back to normal, the Stoics would challenge you to reconsider. The path to your growth is the obstacle. The discomfort is not in the way, it is the way. In facing it, you build new capabilities. You tap into a deeper kind of resourcefulness. You stop looking for easy answers and start developing real inner strength. You might even discover gifts in yourself you didn't know were there. Persistence, emotional intelligence, adaptability, clarity of purpose. It's also worth noting that the path through an obstacle is rarely a straight line. Growth is messy. You might take 2 steps forward and 1 back. You might struggle with doubt or fatigue. That's part of the journey. What matters is that you keep showing up, that you choose to stay engaged, that you view each setback not as a reason to quit, but as a moment to recommit. Over time, this way of seeing becomes more than a coping mechanism. It becomes a source of power. You no longer fear difficulty in the same way, because you've trained yourself to meet it with presence and perspective. You've developed the habit of finding meaning in adversity. And that habit, that Stoic approach, can change your entire experience of life. Because in the end, the most meaningful growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the trial, in the effort, in the moments when you rise despite the challenge. The obstacle, far from being a detour, becomes the foundation upon which you build your strength, your clarity, and your character. Number 8. Small steps, big impact, doing what little you can. In a world that celebrates grand gestures and monumental success, it's easy to feel like small actions aren't enough. We see others achieving big milestones, making headlines, changing the world, and we wonder if our quiet efforts, our simple routines, or our daily struggles even matter. But this is where the wisdom of Stoicism offers a powerful and refreshing truth. Greatness is not built all at once. It is shaped in the small, consistent actions we take every single day. It is found in the moments no one sees, the quiet decisions to keep going, to do what is right, to contribute, even when the results seem far away. The Stoics taught that we should never be discouraged by the scale of the challenge or the size of our role within it. What matters is that we act thoughtfully, purposefully, and in alignment with our principles. They believed in the value of the present moment and the importance of showing up with intention, regardless of how much or how little we think we're able to do. Do what little you can is not a dismissal of ambition. It's an invitation to engage with life in a way that is grounded, focused, and sustainable. When we adopt this mindset, we begin to break down what once felt overwhelming. That big goal, launching a business, writing a book, becoming healthier, making a difference in the world, no longer feels impossible. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or ideal conditions, we shift our focus to the next step, the next choice, the next opportunity to act. We start to understand that progress is not measured in leaps and bounds, but in steady, intentional movement forward. This approach also builds a quiet but powerful form of self-trust. When you prove to yourself day after day that you can take action, even if it's just something small, you reinforce your belief in your own agency. You no longer feel powerless in the face of large problems, because you understand that every ripple begins with a single drop. The daily practice of doing what you can, even when it's modest, begins to shape your mindset, your habits, and eventually your life. There's also a deeper benefit to this way of living: presence. When we're focused on massive results or distant goals, we often become disconnected from the moment we're actually in. We miss the chance to engage fully with the process, the learning, the refinement, the character that's built through effort. But when we commit to doing what little we can, we come back to the present. We give our full attention to the task at hand. And in that presence, we find both meaning and progress. It's important to remember, too, that this mindset nurtures humility. It reminds us that we are not the center of the universe. We are contributors to it. We are not expected to carry the whole weight of the world, but we are responsible for the part that is within our reach. The Stoics weren't interested in control over everything. They were interested in control over themselves. And part of that control is choosing again and again to act, to try, and to do so with purpose. There will be days when progress feels invisible, when your efforts seem too small to matter. But even on those days, doing what little you can is a profound act of resilience. It is a refusal to give up, a quiet rebellion against apathy, and a powerful statement that you still believe in growth. And when those small steps begin to compound, when they start to build upon one another, you'll look back and realize that the little things were never little at all. They were everything. So, take the next small step. Send the message. Do the workout. Write the paragraph. Apologize. Learn. Try. And keep trying. Let go of the need for it all to happen at once, and instead, fall in love with the process of showing up. Not someday, but now. Because when you do what little you can, you're not just moving forward, you're becoming the kind of person who always does. And that is where real impact begins. Number 9, redefining success, virtues over vanity. In modern life, the word success often carries a very specific image, one built on wealth, status, recognition, and visible accomplishments. We are constantly surrounded by messages that reinforce this image. Social media celebrates curated lifestyles, society places value on job titles, and conversations often revolve around material milestones. It's easy to internalize the idea that success is something you earn, collect, or display. But what if that definition is narrow, even hollow? What if true success has less to do with what you have, and more to do with who you are? This is where the Stoic worldview offers a radical, yet liberating perspective. To the Stoics, success was never about accumulating possessions or earning praise. It was about virtue, the quality of your character, your conduct, and your choices. Success, in this framework, means living with honesty, courage, justice, and wisdom. It means being grounded, not in how the world sees you, but in how faithfully you live in alignment with your principles. In other words, success isn't a destination you reach. It's a way of being you cultivate every day. This approach is deeply empowering because it shifts the measure of success away from things outside your control, such as circumstances, opinions, or outcomes, and places it firmly in your hands. No matter your background, your resources, or the cards life has dealt you, you always have the power to act with virtue. You may not control the market, your boss's decisions, or public opinion, but you can control how you show up. That is the Stoic form of success, self-mastery, and alignment with your deepest values. So how do we begin to redefine success in this way? It starts with introspection. Slow down and reflect on what truly matters to you. Not what you've been told to want, but what actually resonates at a deeper level. What kind of person do you want to be? What values feel most alive in you, even if they aren't celebrated by the world around you? What qualities do you admire in others, not because they're powerful or popular, but because they reflect real depth and character? Once you have clarity, you can begin to set goals that support that vision of success. Instead of focusing only on external metrics, look inward. What habits or actions would help you become more honest, more resilient, more kind? How can you contribute to the world around you in a way that feels meaningful? These goals may not always come with applause, but they will come with a sense of peace and purpose that is far more sustaining. It's also important to learn to celebrate effort, not just results. Success isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about how you endure, how you grow, and how you maintain integrity when it would be easier not to. The Stoics saw adversity not as a detour from success, but as one of the most important parts of it. How you handle loss, failure, or discomfort often reveals more about your character than how you handle praise. Changing your definition of success also brings a surprising side effect: joy. When you stop chasing external validation, you begin to feel a quiet freedom. You no longer need to impress everyone, prove yourself constantly, or compare your journey to others. You begin to anchor yourself in what is real, in small acts of courage, moments of grace, and choices that reflect your highest self. And in doing so, you start to experience a deeper, more grounded kind of happiness, one that isn't dependent on outcomes or applause. True success, in the Stoic sense, is about how you live, not what you win. It's about the kind of person you become through your trials and triumphs alike. And once you redefine success in these terms, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to measure your days not by how much you achieved, but by how well you lived. You begin to find fulfillment not in being noticed, but in being true. And that, by any standard, is a life deeply worth living. Number 10. Reject the need for approval, authenticity over acclaim. In a world saturated with likes, followers, ratings, and constant feedback, it's easy to fall into the trap of measuring our worth by how others perceive us. We get used to looking outward for validation, to checking if our choices, our words, or even our appearance earn approval from peers, family, colleagues, or strangers online. Slowly, sometimes without even realizing it, we begin to shape our lives around what's acceptable, appealing, or applauded. And in doing so, we risk losing touch with something far more important: who we really are. The Stoics saw this need for approval not as a harmless desire, but as a subtle form of enslavement. When your sense of worth depends on someone else's opinion, you hand over control of your life to people who don't walk your path, carry your values, or understand your inner world. You become reactive rather than deliberate. You act not from principle, but from pressure. And worst of all, you start to silence the parts of yourself that feel too risky, too different, or too misunderstood. Over time, your life becomes a performance, polished on the outside, but disconnected on the inside. But Stoicism offers a way out. It teaches that true freedom, the kind that brings clarity, peace, and power, begins when you turn inward. When you ground your identity in your own values, rather than the shifting tides of public opinion, you begin to live from a place of authenticity. You no longer chase applause. You no longer contort yourself to fit in. You live in alignment with your principles, knowing that integrity is more lasting than approval, and character more valuable than popularity. To break free from the approval trap, you must first cultivate self-awareness. Ask yourself honestly, why am I making this choice? Who am I trying to impress, and why? Am I acting out of conviction or out of fear of judgment? This kind of reflection can be uncomfortable, but it's powerful. It helps you separate the noise of external expectations from the truth of your own inner compass. From there, you begin to build trust in your own judgment. The Stoics didn't suggest we ignore wisdom from others. They believed in reasoned dialogue and shared learning, but they emphasized that our final decisions must come from within. When you make choices that are rooted in thoughtfulness and virtue, you gain a kind of inner confidence that doesn't waver with others' reactions. You can stand firm in your beliefs, even when they're unpopular, because you know they're rooted in something real. It also helps to accept a hard but liberating truth. Not everyone will like you, and that's okay. Trying to be universally accepted is not only impossible, it's exhausting. Each of us carries our own unique values, experiences, and perspectives. You're not meant to mold yourself into a version of what others want. You're meant to live as your truest self and let the right people recognize you as such. Authenticity filters relationships. When you stop pretending, you start attracting those who connect with who you really are, not who you're performing to be. Of course, living this way doesn't mean you'll never face rejection or criticism. You will. But the difference is that it won't shake you in the same way. Because when you know you're living with integrity, when you're true to your values, your vision, and your voice, then you can withstand the noise. You can handle disapproval without letting it define you. And that is a kind of inner strength that no amount of external praise can match. To reject the need for approval is not an act of rebellion. It's an act of self-respect. It's choosing to live with honesty rather than convenience. It's standing for something, even when it means standing alone. And it's trusting that your worth was never meant to be voted on. It was meant to be lived from the inside out. Number 11, mastering the art of saying no, asserting your values and priorities. We live in a world that constantly pulls at our attention. Emails, texts, obligations, invitations, and expectations flood our lives on a near daily basis. With so many demands placed on our time and energy, it's no wonder we often feel stretched thin, overwhelmed, or quietly resentful. And yet, one of the most powerful things we can do to regain control over our lives is deceptively simple. Learn to say no. But saying no is not always easy. In fact, for many people, it's one of the most uncomfortable things to do. We're often taught to equate saying no with being rude, unhelpful, or selfish. We worry about disappointing others, missing out on opportunities, or being seen as difficult. So instead, we say yes, even when we don't mean it, even when it's not aligned with our values, and even when it pulls us away from the things that truly matter. The Stoics, however, offer a different perspective. They remind us that our time and attention are not infinite resources. They must be guarded and used wisely. Saying no is not just about turning something down. It's about consciously choosing what we say yes to. Every no is really a yes to something else, your priorities, your boundaries, your integrity. It is a powerful declaration of what you stand for and what kind of life you're committed to living. For the Stoics, living well meant living in harmony with nature, including understanding your own nature, your limitations, and your purpose. They believed in acting from reason, not impulse, from principle, not pressure. When you say no with intention and clarity, you're practicing exactly that, deliberate, virtue-guided living. You're not rejecting people, you're protecting your path. You're not being selfish, you're being selective with what deserves your finite energy. To master the art of saying no, start with getting clear about what truly matters to you. What are your core values? What goals are you actively pursuing? What kind of person do you want to be, not just in theory, but in practice? When you're grounded in this clarity, decision-making becomes easier. You stop agreeing to things just to keep the peace or fit in. You begin to discern which opportunities align with your principles and which ones, however tempting, are just distractions in disguise. And remember, saying no doesn't have to be dramatic or defensive. It can be graceful, respectful, and kind. You can express appreciation for the opportunity, explain your reasoning if needed, and still stand firm. In fact, when delivered with authenticity, a thoughtful no often earns more respect than a forced yes. It shows that you're someone with boundaries, someone who knows their priorities and lives accordingly. There's a quiet kind of liberation in saying no. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of overcommitting and under-delivering. It gives you room to focus, to be present, and to give your best where it truly counts. It also builds inner strength, the kind that comes from honoring your own needs, trusting your own judgment, and refusing to be swayed by guilt or pressure. Ultimately, learning to say no is about reclaiming agency over your life. It's about choosing your commitments with care, guarding your energy like a sacred resource, and living not for applause but for alignment. And as you develop this practice, you'll notice something surprising. The world doesn't fall apart when you say no. In fact, it often opens up, making space for a life that's more focused, more intentional, and more authentically yours. Number 12. Letting go with indifference, embracing equanimity. There's a subtle but powerful freedom that comes from understanding what you can control and what you can't. In the whirlwind of daily life, we often exhaust ourselves trying to influence the uncontrollable. How others treat us, how outcomes unfold, how the future plays out. We replay conversations, worry over events, and chase closure in places where it may never arrive. But what if, instead of clinging tightly to these things, we learned to release them? What if we could let go, not with apathy or coldness, but with calm, principled indifference? In the Stoic tradition, this idea is not about being disconnected or emotionally numb. Rather, it's about developing equanimity, the ability to remain steady and centered regardless of what happens around you. The Stoics taught that true peace comes from focusing on the only thing we can ever truly command: our own thoughts, our choices, and our character. Everything else, the opinions of others, the outcomes of our efforts, the chaos of the world, lies outside our control. And when we finally accept this, not just intellectually but deeply, we begin to unburden ourselves from a great deal of unnecessary suffering. To let go with indifference is to stop tying your well-being to things that were never yours to control in the first place. It means you care deeply, but only about what truly matters. You still give your best effort. You still act with intention, passion, and virtue. But once the action is done, you release the outcome. You stop clinging to whether people will approve, whether results will come quickly, whether everything will unfold exactly as you planned. Instead, you stay rooted in the effort itself, finding peace in the fact that you showed up fully and acted from your highest values. Imagine what your days would feel like if you stopped agonizing over the little disruptions, the petty annoyances, the uncontrollable twists of fate. If instead of reacting with frustration or worry, you simply acknowledged those things for what they are, outside your control, and chose not to be disturbed by them. That's the calm clarity the Stoics aimed for. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It means you become stronger, more composed, and less vulnerable to emotional turbulence. Cultivating this mindset requires practice, and it begins with mindfulness. You have to notice your reactions, those moments when you're tempted to spiral into stress or anger over something that doesn't truly deserve your energy. It might start with something small, a delayed train, a rude comment, a plan that falls apart. Instead of letting those things shake you, pause and ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. Not with resentment, but with indifference, the kind that's rooted in wisdom, not withdrawal. Over time, this practice builds a quiet confidence. You start to realize that the less you try to control the uncontrollable, the more power you gain over yourself. And that's the ultimate Stoic strength, not the power to dominate the world, but the power to remain grounded in your own values no matter what the world throws at you. This isn't an easy path. Letting go with grace in the face of uncertainty, loss, or disappointment can feel counterintuitive, even unnatural. But the more you commit to it, the more you experience the inner resilience that Stoicism promises. You'll start to see that serenity doesn't come from the absence of struggle. It comes from your response to it. In the end, letting go with indifference is not about giving up. It's about choosing where your energy goes. It's about caring deeply about what's yours to shape, your actions, your words, your mindset, and surrendering the rest with peace. It's about learning to move through life without being shaken by every storm, because you've anchored yourself in something unshakable, your own reasoned mind and unwavering values. Number 13. Live the philosophy, Stoicism in action. In a world that feels increasingly unpredictable, where chaos, distraction, and uncertainty are often the norm, there's something profoundly stabilizing about knowing that one thing will always remain within your control: your own actions. No matter what happens around you, you still have the power to decide how you respond, how you carry yourself, and how you show up in your life. This is where Stoicism moves from ancient theory to practical, daily guidance. It's not just a philosophy to admire, it's a way of living. The true essence of Stoicism lies not in reading wise quotes or reflecting on moral ideals, but in doing. The ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, didn't just write about virtue, they lived it. Marcus ruled the Roman Empire with calm and duty during times of plague and war. Epictetus, once a slave, taught that freedom begins in the mind. Seneca, caught between politics and philosophy, wrote about living with courage even as death drew near. Their wisdom wasn't just intellectual, it was earned through experience. They weren't trying to impress anyone, they were trying to live with integrity. Today, our battles are different. Information overload, chronic stress, relentless social comparison, the constant tug of war between who we are and who the world expects us to be. And yet, the Stoic mindset fits perfectly into our modern lives. Because Stoicism was never about retreating from the world. It's about showing up fully, consciously, and intentionally, no matter the noise. Living stoically doesn't mean making grand gestures or rigidly controlling every emotion. It means starting small, with consistent, clear choices. It begins when you wake up and ask yourself, what challenges might I face today? And how can I meet them with character? It continues when something goes wrong, and instead of reacting in frustration, you pause and say, I can't change this event, but I can choose my response. It grows stronger when someone criticizes you, and instead of becoming defensive, you ask, is this really about me, or is this just a test of my ego? Even failure, which most people avoid, becomes fuel, not shame. Because to a Stoic, failure is a teacher, not a punishment. This approach isn't just about resilience, it's about responsibility. Stoicism teaches us to respond, not react. To make decisions not from emotion, fear, or the need to please others, but from reason, principle, and self-respect. It's about saying, I will not let fear make my choices. I will not let other people define my worth. I will not be at the mercy of things I cannot control. Instead, I will live with intention. I will practice courage, wisdom, and justice. I will do my best, even if no one notices. To live the philosophy is to live with presence. To bring excellence to your work not because someone is watching, but because it reflects your character. To bring kindness into your relationships not for praise, but because it aligns with your values. To face challenges with steady eyes, because you've chosen to see them not as threats, but as tests of your strength. To bring thoughtfulness even into your smallest moments, how you speak, how you listen, how you move through the world. You don't need to be flawless to live stoically. You don't need to have every answer or maintain perfect calm. You just need to stay committed to the path. Growth isn't about perfection, it's about direction. It's about showing up each day with a little more awareness, a little more discipline, and a little more heart than the day before. Because Stoicism, when lived, isn't a theory. It's not a concept. It's a way of being, a practice, a quiet revolution that happens not in declarations, but in decisions, moment by moment, breath by breath. So if you've studied the words, if the teachings have resonated with you, let today be the moment you bring them to life. Not through grand change, but through one deliberate act. One decision made with clarity and integrity. One choice to embody the philosophy, not just admire it. Because that's when Stoicism becomes real. That's when it stops being a collection of ancient ideas and starts becoming your compass. That's when the philosophy becomes you. Remember this: the true path to tranquility, to a life of depth and fulfillment, doesn't lie in applause, titles, or possessions. It doesn't come from being seen, praised, or envied. It comes from within, from the steady cultivation of virtue, from choosing resilience over resignation, and from nurturing the kind of inner peace that isn't shaken by the chaos around us. This is the essence of Stoicism. This is the strength it offers. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Thank you for reflecting, exploring, and growing alongside the Stoic Journal. You are an essential part of this journey, and every step we take together helps us become stronger, wiser, and more anchored in what truly matters. If today's message sparked something within you, if it helped you see your challenges a little differently, or reminded you of the power you already hold, don't forget to support this space. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next reflection. And most importantly, share this with someone who might need it, because we're not just building an audience, we're building a community. A family of grounded, determined, and unstoppable individuals committed to living with clarity, purpose, and courage. Keep going, keep growing, and always remember, every challenge is an invitation to rise.